Please stand for a reading from the Gospel of John. If you love me, you will keep my commandments, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to be with you forever. This is the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive because it neither sees him nor knows him. You know him because he abides with you, and he will be in you. I will not leave you orphaned. I am coming to you. In a little while, the world will no longer see me, but you will see me. Because I live, you also will live. On that day, you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you. They who have my commandments and keep them are those who love me, and those who love me will be loved by my Father, and I will love them and reveal myself to them.
He was different than most of the kids there because he had no idea what his birthday was, just the day that he entered into the doors. He loved to sing, and he sang so much that I imagine that many of the other kids were so tired of hearing him sing. When he was old enough, he entered into a gaming contest that earned him enough money to get a bus ticket to New York. He found a place right above a pizzeria named Pasquale's, after the chef. One day, as Charles was walking home, he decided to go inside of the restaurant, thinking that the chef would not be there, thinking he would be all alone, just to look around. And all of a sudden, he sees the chef. He sees Pasquale, and Pasquale grabs a rolling pin ready to hit him and yells. And Charles had no idea what to do, so he began to sing. And Pasquale stops, looks at him, and says, "A singing rat, I'm rich." Some of you all look confused. I'm telling you the origin story of Chuck E. Cheese. Come on, y'all, get on board here. This is, know your history. This is what happens when they ban books. You don't learn this information. That's what happens. So during Chucky's first performance, he is supposedly to sing in front of everyone, and he can't do it. He's booed. People are throwing food at him, but he sees a child in the audience wearing a happy birthday hat all alone. And he begins to sing "Happy Birthday" loudly, and the crowd jumps in. And all of a sudden, this child does not feel alone anymore. Later, Pasquale is to incorporate games into the restaurant. Became a place of fun that Chucky would come and host friends and all those so that they would know that they are not astray, abandoned, or alone, to come together to celebrate and be even in the darkness of the world. Because he knew what it meant to be alone, to be abandoned, to be without. And so his entire identity became one of support and advocating so another would never feel the way he did. And yes, while it is fictional, his entire enterprise, this entire story is around the peace that you are not alone. In many ways, this is what Jesus is trying to get at with the disciples. Yes, it's without pizza and games and ball pits. It's without hats and singing, but it's an essence of giving comfort to these disciples, giving a reason to keep moving and keep going in the darkness of the world. That Jesus is here telling these disciples that he is about to leave, that he is about to ascend into heaven, that he is going to die, that he's letting them know that he will no longer be walking with them physically day by day by day. And before they can ask the question, he says, I won't leave you alone. And I suspect that because Jesus had walked these hard years with them, he saw these disciples that had left their families. He saw these disciples that many may have been without, who have felt alone. He saw many in the world on the outskirts and the outsides. He saw these things. He experienced them. And so his word as he leaves is that you will not be alone. And though it's said, these disciples are still fearful. These folks came together to do some counterculture work. They came together creating a new family who were once strangers and now are friends. They came together doing miracles, doing some healings. They came together and rejoiced. They came together for Jesus, and now he's telling me he's leaving. What do we do? In Jesus' speech, he is still some type of way trying his hardest to tell them about his death and resurrection. He's telling them that the Spirit will be with them. But Jesus is speaking to them on a spiritual level. They can understand that right now. Right now they're grieving. And I imagine that Jesus is looking out to them and wondering why they're not getting it and realizing they need something else. And he reaches deep down within his soul, deep in his vulnerable self, and he shares the virtue that has equipped him to withstand the powers of Rome, that helped him to decide to take up his own cross and die, the virtue that allowed him to deal with his own grief. He leaves them peace. And it's the first time in the Gospels that this word, peace, rene in the Greek, is used. And by its very definition, it means the tranquil state of the soul by assurance of its own salvation. Peace in this form is not the absence of conflict, but rather the very presence of God. That what I leave you in these moments, what is here, what is continuing to be with you moment after moment, is the literal presence of God. You may not see it, but you can feel it. You may not can touch it at times, but it's there. But let's be real honest. That's difficult to fathom. Peace, whether it is the cessation of conflict or the presence of God. When we are sitting here right now with all happening in our world, sometimes it just feels like the presence of God is not among us. Now, let me change that. For me, I can't speak for you, but sometimes it's hard to just know that, to have faith in the darkness of this world. Sometimes it's hard to keep believing and keep moving and thinking it's all gonna be all right. Sometimes it's just hard. Because I don't mean this jokingly and in jest, but even Chuck E. Cheese, when filed for bankruptcy in 2020, those moments, those things that to bring joy, it still seems like darkness pervades. And I know that the promise is that God will be with us always. I know that God is with us in the mess of things. I know that. I believe it. This week, as I drove past the Allen outlets and said a little prayer as thinking of those who were massacred, watching memorial service, and I began to feel some of my own responses as just being numb because it happens so much. A few days later, last week, that just right here in our area, a couple of elementary schools had pranks, that there were active shooters. Jokes regarding the end of human life are our children. This has become another pandemic among us. And while there is a vaccination, we continue to get that there is refusal for the injection. We have representatives in all parties who bank from our lives being taken away, but where is this presence, God? Where is this advocate, God? And I know often we say we leave that stuff outside these walls, that we're not to bring it in these walls, but by our very understanding of theology, as John Howard Yoder argues, the Gospels are literally the politics of Jesus. That as we read and acknowledge them, as Christian people, we come to realize that Jesus is calling for action regarding our own activities in the world. That as we read step by step of what Jesus is saying, what Jesus is doing to go against Rome, to go against the empire so that we might have life and life abundantly, it is not an eternal. Jesus is talking about the right now, the present, not just the far off. So, the story, the gospel, this exact moment in John, Jesus is gathering together a few, his disciples, to go out for a social gospel. Because he realizes that if he doesn't commission them to go out, it could all end with just him. that they are to be commissioned to go out, and they are to commission, and then they are to commission, and then we get right here in 2023, and we are commissioned to do the actions, the rites, the changing, the calling, the protesting. We are to go out in this world and Jesus says, if you love me, if you love me, you will keep my commands. If you love me, you will do this. If you love me, you will be part of a transformative ethic, a transformative life, a transformative justice that is not just for self, but is for all. Our faith and our public life cannot be separated. But one is to support and correct and supersede the other, but it's up to us to define which one of that will happen. And so this leads us all the way back to Jesus' words at the start. That if ye love me, keep my commandments. If ye love me, keep my commandments. And though there are over 600 commandments in the Hebrew Bible, and we may not know them all by heart, Jesus constantly repeats something that we've seen over and over again in the Hebrew Bible. Love me and love one another. When the Israelites were going around and around in circles and wilderness and wondering how much longer, the words were love me and love one another. When they went to strange lands with strangers and they didn't know how to interact, Jesus repeats the words that were said in Joshua and even Judges. Love ye one another, love God. It's a reverberation of being said, but also in what we do. So yes, I believe God is with us, but I also know that faith without works is dead. And that our love can't just be lip service, but it also must be action. Jesus isn't telling us anything we didn't know, but a reminder that though the advocate is with us, that we keep these commands, and that love sometimes looks like tearing down strongholds, beating swords into plowshares, spears into pruning hook, putting mission over money, putting restrictions to safeguard our children. That love looks like putting safety back into our minds rather than fear into our homes and souls. And my friends, I hope one day we can get to the place of the enslaved people who were oppressed and beaten down, and though had every reason to feel abandoned, still wrote these words and sang, after a while the sun's going to shine, after a while dark clouds are going to pass, after a while we'll get to the point of singing hallelujah, after a while a little work is done. After a while, my friends, if ye love, may we change, may we act, may we do, may we be persistent together. Amen.